Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel where today I have finally pulled the Ford GT out of hibernation. It's time to get this car back on the roads after what's fair to say has been a very long time, I think about 9 months now, for a combination of factors. Firstly, I've been away for the last 4 months or so. Before that, winter, pretty horrible weather and the car basically living in storage, and just before that, it was away for a couple of months to have a major overhaul service following my escapades in the summer over to the Nurburgring, and it was quite an expensive service, we could say. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about that while taking it out on what I believe should be quite a nice day outside to go for a drive in the ultimate Shmeemobile, the Ford GT. There's something quite fun in particular about having these two cars parked side by side, the Ford GT with the Porsche Taycan Turbo S, in that they both have dark main colours with gold accents respectively. Now I think it's the first time they've been fully opened up side by side. They were both at Dump Barn together, but basically normally they're under covers, whereas the Ford GT came back from its service and went into hibernation right at the same time in November when I bought the Taycan Turbo S, which has seen a lot of daily driving duties since, and then of course both cars were basically abandoned for the whole of 2021 so far. Obviously, I do need to get all of this fixed up, the slight damage that happened to the car in this space while I was away. But you might remember when I originally did the specification for the Ford GT, I talked about giving it gold wheels. Now remember, this color is liquid red, this deep pearlescent metallic, looks gorgeous, especially under the light reflections that you have here, with the stripes that are in the Alan Mann gold to pay tribute to the 1960s Alan Mann Racing GT40s to create that red and gold color scheme. I did think to take the standard GT wheels and make them the same color, which you can see also we've got the shift paddles, we've got the stitching and the embroidery on the headrests inside as well, but instead went for a set of these which came out after I did the spec. These are the BBS FIRs, effectively the same wheel as the GT Le Mans race car, but in the road car configuration in Le Mans grey paint. The metallic grey paintwork, the same color as on the race cars, and given this has so much racing connection and storyline, those are the perfect fit. I had talked though about doing them something like this, the Aurum Gold that we have on the Taycan, which is a factory Porsche option, often seen on the sportier cars we could say, but I think it suits the dark green very well. Remember, this is a vinyl, the midnight green, especially when you have the Porsche Crest, for example, which has those gold touches. Anyway, we're going to leave that here today. We need to talk a bit more about the GT, which is looking stunning, and yes, I do not normally park it across 2 parking spaces. I've just borrowed them for the moment. It is far too wide to fit it into a single space anyway, so if I actually even parked this in, let's say, number 23 here, you wouldn't be getting a car in the middle either way. Obviously, not exactly the most practical car in the world. I've just managed to squeeze a bag into the limited space that we have back here, but every time it is a special car to drive. A couple of thousand miles on the clock now, and like I said, it's just had a fairly major overhaul service. I've done a lot of driving with it, the tour in the US, all of the trips to the Nurburgring, the big outing that I did with it before it went for its second year service effectively towards the end of last year. It doesn't quite work like that in the same way that other cars do. It's not strictly to the year. It's also by mileage, and to be honest, I've just kind of had the services done whenever I felt the car needs a service. But they went through it with a fine-tooth comb, replacing a number of components, fixing things, making sure everything was properly ready and set to be driven in anger again in the future. But that did incur quite the bill that I need to tell you about. I think with the keys in my pockets walking around, the cars are locking and unlocking and all sorts. Yeah, it was quite the bill, particularly to do with brakes. We can talk about that when we're out on the road. So let's go and take this car then for a drive out, get it out into the sunshine, and go and have a bit of an update, what is going on, and what the future plans will be really with the Ford GT. Not the easiest to climb into. Of course, it is left-hand drive. All Ford GTs are left-hand drive, by the way. You can't have one right-hand drive at all. But let's just start this up. Sounds good. So, just over 6,000 miles on the clock. Not bad for a new GT. I need to make sure the Taycan is locked up, and out we go. I think we all know by now that driving a car like this in London traffic is far from ideal. It is busy, it is congested. Obviously, I have a desperate need to be very, very careful, and this is exactly why I'm very much looking forward to having my new garage somewhere slightly outside of the city so that we can start driving on nice roads rather than having to sit in city traffic jams in something that is wide, awkward, and very valuable should the worst happen. However, like I said, The car has been... Actually, I did take it out once, back in October. I took it when we went with the Heritage Focus RS to have that car serviced. And I talked at the time about some of the running costs of this, but little did I fully know. Up to then, I'd only had oil change services, which are actually surprisingly easy to do. Certain Ford dealers can do them. It's maybe in the US, like $500 or $600. Here, it's about £500 or £600, so a little bit more. But for a car like this, that's nothing, believe me. There are many cars that cost substantially more. Tyres, regular Sport Cup 2s. I mean, they carry the Ford Performance tag and designation, so a little bit more expensive, but nothing mental. And the fuel economy we know is bad, but you don't do many miles. This car's done 6,000 miles in total, which by Ford GT standards is a lot. I know for 2 years of ownership of it, that doesn't sound like a huge number, 3,000 miles a year, but it's a bit, I guess, almost of a case study for Ford, seeing a car being driven quite so much. You know, I've had quite a few track day outings with this, Silverstone, Road Atlanta, Nurburgring, and plenty more fun with it, driving it in Sardinia, in the south of France, some nice twisty roads. So brakes we're going to touch on in a moment. Generally speaking, it's obviously held up very well. The car's never left me stranded anywhere. We've had a few small bits and pieces, but then, like I said, I have stumbled into a slightly more expensive bill than I had anticipated when it comes to these things. So we're going to be heading out now towards the countryside. We're going to be going to drive on some nice roads on a very nice day. Actually, it's cold, but it's clear. The sun is out, which is exactly what you want on one of the few occasions for taking something as special as this out for a drive. And obviously it's not going to be a car that's ever going to do a huge number of miles. That's never going to be this thing now. It's going to be a car that I treasure and drive for enjoyment. You know, taking it out on a day like today. I've been away for so long, just can't wait to be back in here and to be out, able to put the foot down a little bit and to enjoy it some more, especially having been around the US to so many places where I took this car and thinking about it quite so much over the last couple of months. It is now time to go and enjoy it. It's when we get out onto some lovely English countryside roads that this car starts to come much more to life, building out through some of the revs, enjoying more of the noise of it. Of course, it is a very big, wide car, and being left-hand drive on tight roads like this is certainly something you have to think about. Lots and lots of cyclists around. Obviously, you do get a little bit more vision around a right-hand bend, but you get significantly less vision around left-hand bends, so you do need to be conscious of that. I have got quite used to hopping backwards and forwards, though, between right-hand drive and left-hand drive. This car just wakes up when you start to drive it that little bit harder. It really is a funny sensation. It feels at slower speeds like it just doesn't necessarily make entire sense, and then when you get out onto open road like this, these beautiful curving, meandering roads, it's just awesome. And then it gets even better when you get to a racetrack. The only thing that's slightly peculiar about it, and I couldn't at the moment tell you exactly why, is that for some reason the steering wheel is ever so slightly off. It's a couple of degrees out, which is not, I believe, down to tyre pressures. They're all reporting correctly. Nothing feels unusual. I think possibly something's been done or changed during the service that's knocked it ever so slightly out of normal procedure. So I'll have to work that one out in the near future to make sure things are all as they should be with a car like this. But what a lovely day. I tell you what, English countryside roads, or even better Welsh or Scottish countryside roads, are a very, very nice place to be driving. Get used to the different indicators on the steering wheel in this, as we get out onto a completely open road. The thing with this car is that it doesn't sound crazy loud and dramatic when you put your foot down and you go for a flat out red line acceleration there. It's much better with the Akrapovic exhaust that we fitted in the US than it is obviously without, but it's not going to be a screamer. It's not a V10 or a V12. What it is a car that is so dynamically brilliant in terms of how it feels, in terms of how it drives, the suspension, the steering, the feedback, that it's just a delight to take it out every single time. And obviously racetrack, Nurburgring, completely different experience again. Just it clings through corners beautifully, absolutely beautifully. We are in the UK after all, and unsurprisingly, it is actually very quickly taking a turn for the worse and starting to drizzle. But let me talk a little bit more about some of the costs that were involved in this full service to the Ford GT. Now, the big thing overall has been the brake pads. Now, like I said, I've had a few good outings with this car, a lot of miles, a lot of hard driving miles, many laps at Silverstone, and unfortunately that meant that the pads were getting towards the end of their life. And we are talking pads as opposed to the full carbon ceramic discs. I don't even want to begin to think about those right now. So a set of 4 pads all the way around for this, the price of which might take you a little bit by surprise. If we were talking about a McLaren or Ferrari, maybe a set of 4 pads would be £1,000, £1,500. The full set of pads for the 2017 onwards Ford GT, this being a 2018, came in at about £5,500. Now that's about $8,000 for a set of 4 pads. So combining that to a bunch of labour costs and other parts and things that needed to be done, the full service bill was about £8,500, around or just shy of $12,000 for the second full overhaul service on the Ford GT, and obviously beyond that some warranty items and a few bits and pieces as you normally get with a bespoke car of this level of performance. So that was quite a big gulp, we could say, a biting of the tongue, a big bill. It comes with the ownership of these kind of cars, and don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I feel very lucky to be able to effectively be able to cover that, be able to use the car, be able to drive it, and be able to share some of the experiences of a car like this with you as well. A car that I really do enjoy an awful lot, as you've seen today, being able to get back out on the road behind the wheel of this incredible thing. I do still wonder about the wheels, whether those could have worked in gold to match with some of the other details and accents. Yeah, you can see the raindrops starting to fall on the car at the moment, but still very, very happy with the stitching that we have on the seats and on the steering wheel. Though, talking about the steering wheel, I think I need to get the Alcantara on here redone as well. It's worn quite a lot, particularly because it's squared off down at the lower right hand side where you tend to push it around when you're driving, and obviously on the normal hand grips. I guess I've done a lot of high intense miles driving in anger, faster speeds on the track, out in hot countries, hot places, like for example in Florida and California, so it's worn a little bit quicker than it would have done under normal driving, and I'd like to refresh it a little bit. So we'll work out why that's not entirely straight. We'll bring it back up fully to standard as well at some point soon and make sure it's all operating and properly running exactly as something like this should be. You can quickly see the weather is turning though, so what else can I really update on to do with the Ford GT? Well, quite a few good miles under its belt. It will do more miles in the future, don't get me wrong, but I think it will be more now a car that I treat as a car that's part of my collection, something to treasure, something to keep, something to enjoy owning a long way into the future. I have no plans to ever sell the Ford GT. I don't know if we'll do more trips and adventures with it, potentially something down the line. It'd be great to get this out with some of the other cars again as time continues to go by, but today I just had to bring it out, particularly after the adventure in the GT500, reliving some of those memories where I actually took this car as well before, and now having gone there with the GT500, like by the Las Vegas sign out on the entrance to the Las Vegas Strip, on Ocean Drive, where we began the Where's Shmee US Edition tour, the actual start point on Ocean Drive, before we drove 7,500 miles across country and a few other bits and pieces as well. But the Ford GT, I called it earlier the ultimate Shmeemobile because this is really, I think, the car I most identify with, the car that means the most to me of any that I own, the car that I was the most excited to take delivery of, the most excited to travel and use properly as Ford intended with the GTs originally, and the car that is really and truly very, very special, I think, for you guys as well. For now though, a bit of an insight into some of the costs of running a car like a new Ford GT. Yeah, a big one, a big one. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I appreciate your support as always. For now, I'm going to go and get myself out of this drizzle before it starts absolutely pouring with rain. That's it for this time though. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.